I'm Jonathan Nguyen, and welcome back to this week's podcast. So, let's talk about Greek tragedy and its relation to metalsmithing. Let's see if we can figure out why the most famous tragedians used metallurgy imagery in the first place. So let's break this down into the material that we commonly see in the imagery, the working of the material, and the use of the object after they manipulate the material. The types of metal used in the tragedies are most commonly three types: bronze, silver, and gold. All of these different materials have different implications. The types of metals can be used to denote specific hierarchies or give certain people or ideas more importance in comparison to others. A clear example can be seen in Aeschylus's Persians, using the passages from line 402 to 409 in the Lemke translation. He juxtaposes the treasure, or fountain of silver, which lies in Greek soil, to the agricultural language of the Persian men, seen in his use of herds, the man flock, diction typically used by farmers. For Athens, silver was their source of wealth and funded these war efforts. This contrast between agricultural and metallurgy imagery emphasizes the superiority of the Greeks in comparison to the Persians. This dichotomy is often seen in the whole tragic play, with the Persians being described as more primitive, with a natural landscape, when compared to the more technologically advanced and more powerful Greek society. In some cases, we can see the authors imply their moral values in the text, as seen in Sophocles' Electra, from lines 544 to 548 in the Bag and Scully translation. The chorus there describes the axe used to kill Agamemnon as bronze, which seems to be the least valuable when compared to silver and gold, which are most often used. This implies a condemnation of the actions of Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, as when compared to the wealth of gold and silver, bronze is nothing glamorous. Furthermore, the epitome of values seems to be commonly depicted with the use of gold, the most valuable metal. As we can see in Euripides' Iphigenia at Aulis, when describing the armor of Achilles on page 256, in the Roche translation, the golden armor of Achilles highlights the importance of heroic glory in Sophocles' writing. He uses the most valuable metal, gold, to represent the armor of the greatest warrior in the entire tragedy. This can be seen to simultaneously raise Achilles' value and hint at what is truly important in Sophocles' point of view: living and dying honorably for the Greek society. It is a message to the Greek audience of the importance of glory and being in the right state of mind. Another example of the use of gold is Euripides' Medea, translated by Roche on page 355. Here we can see Medea complain about the difficulty in telling the differences between real gold and just something with a fake outer appearance. And the context she uses is when comparing men, one of which holds true value, which the other might simply be a facade used to cover up something of less value or useless. This shining appearance, quote unquote, will not function at the highest level when used to forge something of greater value. Forging, right, is what comes after picking the material. And on the topic of working of the material, the process, as I think is commonly known, of forging or smithing is an extremely demanding and complex process. I believe the tragedians use this innate complexity in application to add more depth to seemingly flat characters or situations. Things like war are always intentional. They are something crafted by humans, just like metalworking. But often, the process which leads to the creation is exceedingly complex. While the process may be long and intricate, the product, such as war, can be brutally simple. Most clearly seen in Aeschylus's Agamemnon, from lines 438 to 444 in the Green translation, in which Aeschylus describes the war using diction such as spear, fire, dust, ashes, and most importantly, money. This underlines many of the events which compounded to create the Trojan War. Additionally, the imagery allows for a type of foreshadowing of the greed, death, loss, and wealth behind and to be made from the war. On the topic of the depth forging and smithing imagery adds, my favorite example is the warrior Ajax. The amount of depth Sophocles was able to add was pretty mind-blowing. Throughout the story, we are introduced to the seemingly insanely stubborn and oafish warrior Ajax, who seemingly has no regard for leaving his family behind through suicide. His obsession with glory and his pride seems inhuman, but in Sophocles' Ajax, in the Bag and Scully translations, from lines 788 to 793, we can see just how human he actually is. Blacksmiths, as context, are known for their peerless creations, most commonly at least. However, they also have a crucial role in the repairing of armor and weapons. Much like how blacksmiths can repair or reforge swords, Sophocles implies that something, or more accurately, someone, can repair or reforge Ajax when using this metallurgy or blacksmithing imagery. The only person capable of changing Ajax to the extent of overcoming his Herculean flaws is Tecmessa, his wife. This is brought to light in Ajax's next statement, how he softens at that woman's words. Once again, with the use of soften, the imagery of smithing and the melting down of metals is used. Only this woman, his wife, can soften Ajax's resolve and reforge or change him, so he can move past his stubborn pride and prevent his nonsensical suicide. The only thing actually holding back Ajax was the fact that he would have to leave his son fatherless and his wife a widow amidst all of his enemies. Tecmessa's importance is only furthered by the choice of not using her name as Sophocles' decision. Distancing himself from his family by not using their name instead implies their unequivocal place in his being to that extent. If he did use their names, he might not have been able to carry out his selfish plan. Ajax was truly a broken man. Unable to move past his hubris, his unending pride, unable to listen and resist his selfish desires, he was unable to see that the only source of repair was in his family. Now, something we can often see are people or characters or events being personified through weapons. Ajax was described as a sharp edge or weapon, and what stands out most initially with metallurgy and forging are the products, as I've said before. Characters in the tragedies are often personified through weaponry or jewelry, and the differences in their portrayals give us insight into the cultural norms and values of the tragedians. Typically, men or masculine actions are portrayed through weapons, usually spears or swords. An important distinction is the importance placed on fighting through physical means. This can be seen through Aeschylus's Persians, as the Persian forces constantly were described with an army that used bows, something cowardly in comparison to the Greeks, who fought using swords and spears. This is opposite the usual depiction of women in Attic tragedies. Women are often portrayed as jewelry or objects, such as mirrors or necklaces or simply gold. This unfortunately follows a common theme of men being seen as more dominant, while women are depicted as a prize of some sort. In Aeschylus' Agamemnon, it is stated that it is held in the balance of his spear when talking about the war in Troy. Clytemnestra and Aegisthus' masculine act of murder is depicted through an axe, while Ajax was reduced to a sharp blade. Arguably more important than the weapon imagery is the use of coins and currency. Ares is described as a money changer in Aeschylus' Agamemnon. But why is that important? Aeschylus is able to highlight the damnable side of war and the humans involved in them. Through the course's account of its cause, it shows how it can dehumanize and result in more grief than joy, than the glory that comes out of it. The fallen men from both sides are so numerous and so commonplace that they can be equated to money. While all of them had families and stories, they are reduced to simple coins, something to be exchanged on a whim. An interesting fact is that engraved on the coins is the Greek equivalent of the word character. This already intrinsically just shows how human war is when used in the context of the Trojan War in Aeschylus' Agamemnon. What else could create so much death and suffering over one woman than humans? A pretty dark and morbid truth. From the perspective of the Argive elders, Ilium would have been the great darkness plaguing their city, as it took away all the young men and the future of Argos. The light that would shine then in that darkness was not a glorious victory, but instead these corpse fires, full of the foundation of their city-state. But how do these all tie together? Throughout this podcast, I'm sure you have noticed a common concept, or at least I hope you have. That is my best answer to why metalworking metaphors. What I've come up with is that their main function is to emphasize characters' humanity in the stories. Humans are known to be a lot of things. In some cases, they have a propensity for evil, greed, and death. But on the other hand, humanity is amazing, with people who reach the pinnacle of glory, wealth, and greatness. But perhaps more important than that is people's ability to change. Much like metalworking, a profession where one can completely forge a simple piece of metal into a multitude of things, people can change their own lives. But their reach is not just limited to themselves and their actions. It goes so far as to either work for the benefit or harm of other people. We are the people who manufacture war. We are the people who exhibit honor or growth in defeat. And one of the greatest representations in modern media of this importance of blacksmithing is in The Lord of the Rings. It is a story which is similar to the Greek tragedies in the fact that it has a large focus on war and conflict and on death, all because of one ring. Some differences are the importance placed on weapons compared to jewelry in the film, as instead of placing more importance on weapons, such as in the tragedies, the film follows countless races battling for one ring. What I think is most crucial in there, although, is that it's how much each character matures and changes throughout the trilogy. People can be repaired, and people and the causes of conflict and war are not one-dimensional. We create things as humans. We do things with our own hands, and ultimately, it is in the hands of both the humans and the gods to forge the future they desire. If there is one constant about humanity, it is our ability to change for better or for worse. It's up to you to decide.